very much for joining me today, and this is my autumn reading wrap-up, which means that today I'm going to be talking about the books that I've read this autumn. Now, I've had a lot of books that I've been putting away for a long time, just because I wanted to read them when autumn begins, and when I have this rainy, cloudy atmosphere around me. One of these books was The Picture of Dorian Gray, and boy, do I have a few words to say about it. The Picture of Dorian Gray is such a famous classic book. I know that a lot of people have The Picture of Dorian Gray as their most favorite book, and it's also like the ultimate dark academia book, which I love the aesthetic of. I've been wanting to read it for a very long time. So when autumn started, that was the first book that I decided to pick up, and since everyone seems to love it, I thought that I'm just gonna read it and it's gonna be an easy 5-star review for me, and I was going into it thinking that I'm gonna love it and it's gonna become one of my favorite books as well. Guess what though? It was kind of disappointing, not to criticize one of the most popular books of all time. It really didn't live up to the excitement that I was getting myself into. Like, I love the idea of it. I love the idea that every bad thing that you're doing leaves a mark on you, and if it wasn't for the appearance that it gives you, then people would just go and sin left and right. I loved that. Just don't get me wrong, I know that it's a very important book, but I just can't give a 5-star review to a book that has a line going something like, women have been fighting for their liberty for years, but they are still slaves for men. Oh, really? Also the main characters, okay, Dorian, I understand that he's supposed to be flawed, but his best friend, Henry, right? Oh my god, the worst character of all time. I hated him so much. Every time he opened his mouth, it was just to say some stupid thing that was so offensive to just everyone around, and I truly hated him. The only character that I liked in this book was Basil, and I'm not being biased because he's an artist and I am too, but just he was actually the only proper likable character there. And also, after reading the book, I decided to watch the film adaptation with Ben Barnes, right? With Colin Firth, who plays the meanest and worst guy. So I decided to watch the film adaptation, as I love doing. And the film is also so bad. They've created so many unnecessary things that weren't even in the book in the first place, and they just made it worse somehow. Guys, what is this mess? So yeah, that was a 3-star review for me. Next, I've read As You Like It by Shakespeare, A Vindication of the Rights of Women by Mary Wollstonecraft, and I finished reading Emma by Jane Austen. And I did all that for one of my videos, so if you want to hear me talking about them, you can check it out. The video is me reading books that Maeve Wiley from Sex Education series reads, part 2 actually. In my previous reading wrap-up, I said that I've read Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie, and it brought back a lot of very pleasing memories of me reading detectives and enjoying them, and I said that I want to read more detectives in the nearest future, and I did. So this autumn I've read Body in the Library by Agatha Christie and Halloween Party by Agatha Christie. Body in the Library was kind of, I would say, a little bit too twisted, because I was starting to lose the plot line near to the end, and the ending was kind of a little bit weird, so I didn't fully enjoy that. It was a solid detective, but it definitely wasn't my favorite, so it's something between 3 and 4 stars. Halloween Party, however, I actually read it on Halloween, well, not in one sitting, but I finished reading it on Halloween, so I'm glad that I did that. Halloween Party was chef's kiss. I really enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend you My phone almost fell. I would definitely recommend you reading Halloween Party if you want to read more detectives. It wasn't really that much about Halloween really, so you can read it at any season if you like to. The detective starts at the Halloween party, and it was like a party for kids, and it's a very small town where like everyone knows each other and not a lot of people live there. A murder mystery writer sits there at the party, so I don't know if like Agatha Christie decided to have a prototype of herself, but basically, yeah, she's sitting at that party and kids around her are talking about her books, and one girl is saying, you know what, I actually saw a murder one time. But this girl has a reputation of always lying and making stuff up, so no one believes her. And when they're like, oh yeah, you did, so then tell us about like where it was and who got killed, and she's like, no, I'm not gonna tell you, you don't believe me, you don't deserve to hear that. And they're all asking her, if you saw a murder, why didn't you ever tell anyone? She was like, I saw it like years ago, and I didn't really understand that it was a murder at the time. I only understood it like after years of thinking about it. And this night, after she said that, she gets murdered. So like everyone is being very skeptical about whether she actually saw a murder or not, because as I said, it's a very small town and murders like this rarely happen, and the only 3 murders they can think about are like, well, pretty obviously murders that if you saw, you wouldn't really mistake it for anything else. And I get that she's like a liar and she was always making things up just for everyone to give her attention. But every single character, when talking about this girl, the first thing that they were telling to Hercule Poirot, who's the main detective of the story, the first thing that they were telling him is like, well, you know what, she's a liar, so I wouldn't really believe the word she said. And that gets repeated hundreds of times. Guys, I understood that she's a liar, okay? I believe you. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. I've already said a lot, but the ending was so good. I really enjoyed that. I was gasping a lot. And that was a 5-star detective. The next book that I've started reading this autumn is The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. So I saw this book in a local bookstore and I liked the cover in spite of not judging the book by its cover, and I decided that the cover is interesting and maybe I should read that. But then I went home and then I opened TikTok, and everyone on TikTok was saying that they've cried while reading this book, especially at the ending. So I got a little bit more interested, and then I saw an article that was called something like books that Hermione Granger would love to read. And you know what? Anything that she would like to read, I would like to read also. And The Book Thief was on this list, actually along with the Body in the Library. I was sold, and I went to that bookstore and I got this book. And oh my god, guys. I cannot get through it. It's like 550 pages or something like this. I think I have like 100 pages left. I cannot get through it. I'm so tired of reading it. Like, the main thing that got me into actually reading it is the fact that people were like shocked by the ending. They were crying so much, and I wanted to know what was the ending. And I just can't get through it because it's so like, it takes place during the war and everything is so dark, everything is so sad. It's so dim and it's so gloomy and everything's so just sad, and I don't want to read about such sadness anymore. I'm so tired of it. Everyone's poor, everyone's hungry, there's literally nothing you can do about it. The main character is a little girl who at first didn't really know how to read or write, but then she took up this habit of stealing books and well, she's the book thief, as you guessed it. Like, I'm not gonna say anything more because I feel like all the other major plot points would be spoilers. And that's another thing, nothing really happens in this book, and if it happens, you never get to know about it. Like, the first time that you hear it, because the chapters are placed in such an order that in the beginning they tell you, you know what happens, and then they start to kind of prepare you for what's gonna happen, and then at the ending of the chapter they're like, but we'll talk about this later, and you'll find out about this later. And it always happens like this. So there, even if there are some twists that you would be surprised by, you're not really that surprised by them because you have already prepared yourself for them like 100 chapters ago. That's me rambling on about The Book Thief. I don't know if I'll ever get to finish it. I want to, because I'm still interested in what's gonna happen at the ending, but I just can't find it in myself to sit and finish it. Also, the narrative is led by the death. Heard of it? So, it's like, this day it was like a big battle and I had a lot of work on my hands. I had to pick up a lot of souls. Another thing is that I'm not really too attached to any of the characters. I feel like there's only one character that I care about, and it's not even the main girl. I feel like the ending is sad because it's kind of connected with something bad happening to the main characters, right? Well, especially the main girl, but I don't feel that like attached to her, so that I don't even know. I feel like I'm gonna be super underwhelmed by the ending if I finish it. Also, after reading The Picture of Dorian Gray, I was so sad in terms of reading, and I wanted to read something for escapism. And the POV that was created in The Book Thief was really not the place that I would want to escape to. Another one that falls in that category was The Outsider by Albert Camus. And actually I've read it for a video that I don't know when will it come out, but I'm not gonna talk too much about it. I'm just gonna say that I didn't like it. And again, don't get me wrong, I understand that it's very important, that it's very profound, it has a lot of like deep meaning to it, but it just like was so much not for me. It just had everything that I hate about books. Again, it was so dim and so dark and so cruel, like too cruel I wouldn't say. And sometimes it works for me, like in Crime and Punishment, for example, or Metamorphosis, right? Okay. It worked for me, the gloomy atmosphere and everything. In this one though, I don't know, I didn't like it at all. Now that I've talked so much about the books that I hated, I'm gonna tell you about the last book that I read this autumn. It was The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. That was exactly what I needed after reading all of these dark and sad books. That was just, this one was such a comfort. It's one of the books that just thinking about it makes me feel butterflies in my stomach. So the book is led from perspective of a 15-year-old, I think, boy who has autism, and one day he finds a dead dog of his neighbor, and well, first of all, he feels sad because he liked the dog, but second of all, he decides that it's now his duty to investigate this crime, because also he's like a big fan of Sherlock Holmes, and his favorite book is The Hound of Baskervilles, and here, some crime connected to the dog, he really feels like he's the Sherlock Holmes of this situation. So he tries to investigate this thing. He lives with his father. His father tries his best, I guess, to treat him right, but sometimes they have like accidents, seen as Christopher, the main character, the boy, is sometimes hard to live with. And it also is written in my favorite style of books. It's written as a diary of the main character. I love it when it's written from the point of view of the main character, and not even like the point of view, but the diary. Because the diary is such a great tool to make you really care about the character. Because, for example, the format that I don't like are letters, because in letters you only say the stuff that you want a different person to hear, right? And so you filter everything out except for like the main things, and sometimes you aren't even truthful in your letters, right? The diary, however, is the place where you can pour your heart out and say everything just the way it feels, and it makes you care so deeply about the character because you see all of their first-hand emotions and feelings and the things that they care for, and I just loved it. It's also like the book with not a lot happens, you just kind of follow this small part of the main character's life and what happens with them and what they feel about it. There were a couple of twists that made me surprised. It was really all worth it at the end. And two books that are very, very similar to this one, well, they gave me similar feelings, are The Birds to Be in a Wallflower and also Flowers for Algernon. So if you liked these two, I definitely recommend you reading The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. And The Book Thief, take some notes on how to make your readers care about your characters. Okay, I'm being so harsh on The Book Thief. I'm sorry. If you like this book, I'm really glad. So yeah, I don't think I'm gonna say anything else about The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. Again, in order to not spoil anything for you. I'm just gonna say, if you think about reading it, if what I've described sounds interesting to you, definitely pick it up. It was so easy to read, and it's one of the books that when you're not reading it, you just can't wait to get back to reading it. For now, that's all. Thank you very much for watching. You can follow me on Goodreads if you want to see my reading updates. You can follow me on Instagram where I post my drawings, or you can follow me here if you feel like it. So that was it. Hopefully see you next time. Goodbye.